The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, and help me welcome Bill Ohm. Bill, it's been a while. We served up there in Congress for a while, and now you're thinking about doing it again.
Yeah, 3 terms in the big house that I'm on parole right now. But the voters may choose to revoke that parole and send me back to the big house.
I see. Well, let's see that happen. But I saw an op-ed in the Union Leader recently that I thought was really impressed with what you said. Why did you do that?
Yeah, that was the article. This was printed on Union Leader on March 25 of 2022 in response to an article that op-ed that Chuck Douglas put out. And he's no fan of Donald Trump, and he was taking some shots at the president for his handling of Putin and so on, which I thought was kind of unfair and misleading. So I thought it would be worth a response. So I wrote the editorial. And what I do in my editorial is talk about the interest of Putin and what is he trying to do and how's he going about it. And I think we've seen a pretty interesting contrast with Putin between the Obama-Biden years and the Trump years.
Definitely.
What we saw during the Biden years was, well, we'll try to be nice, but we really want a piece of Ukraine, so we're going to just take the insignias off of our special forces and have these little green men just march into the Crimea and see what happens.
Right.
So they marched into Crimea. The Ukrainians were kind of in a transition government at that time. They still had some Russian influence, and they weren't really strong nationally. And they basically were able to march in, and the sailors who were defending the port had to surrender. So Russia took over the Crimea. And so then what did the Obama-Biden administration do?
Yeah.
Crickets. Oh, you're very bad, Mr. Putin. You shouldn't be invading the Crimea. We're going to send you a very bad message to the UN. Well, fine. So that was digested, and then having done that, he sends forces across the border into the Donbass region because he wants to build a land bridge between mainland Russia and the Crimea and through that region. So what happens then? Did the U.S. send any arms to Ukraine, or did they just send blankets? You're crying these.
They said helmets too, didn't they?
Yeah, helmets too. Yeah, that's right. The hard-headed State Department sent helmets. Very appropriate. So then Trump gets elected.
Yeah.
So now what happens? Well, there's the kind of prize fighters, kind of do a little bobbing and weaving, seeing what's going on. And that gets into, I think, Putin's basic tactic. Under the Trump approach, there's a number of meetings, as Chuck Douglas points out, between Trump and Putin. And why would that be? Well, I think it would be for Trump to size up this guy, what's he really going after, and for Putin to understand where Trump is coming from. And that was, don't mess things up under my watch.
Yeah.
Because if you do you know what happened with ISIS when I had to go into Syria and clean that up, that mess that was left under the Biden administration, that Trump cleaned up? They had to take out ISIS, and they went in tough, and they wiped them out. And then after ISIS was wiped out, there was still the bad guys from Iran, floating around the world, making trouble in Iraq, and they start killing U.S. servicemen. So what does Trump do? He takes out the top dog of the Iranian commandos in Iraq, Soleimani. Okay. So we've got some evidence here that if you start messing with U.S. interest, we're going to take some forceful and fast response. So I think that was the message that Trump was trying to tell Biden through his, and I'm sorry, tell Putin through his actions. That look, we're drawing some lines here, but we're going to force these lines. And you take out U.S. service people, we're going to come after you. So there was kind of this standoff for 4 years between Putin and Ukraine, that he basically consolidated his gains, but wasn't interested in risking repercussions from Donald Trump for any further activity in the Ukraine. So then the election takes place. So what is one of the first things that Putin wants to do? He wants a summit with Biden. Biden doesn't want a summit with Putin. Putin wants a summit with Biden. And why do you think that is, Carl?
I just would take a guess that he's trying to see who Biden is, really. And he found out pretty quickly.
I would think so. I would think so. Is this the guy, as I put on my editorial, this guy could stand up, think on his feet, and make decisive action when it's required? Or see a person that's going to be kind of, let me check with my bureaucrats, let me check with the political winds, and I'll get back to you. So after a summit with Biden, Putin decides what the answer is, and he invades the rest of Ukraine.
Right. So that's...
And here we are.
Well, you're right. And I think, I hope people see it that way, because some people don't pick up on those little things that show what you can expect.
Yeah. So I was, kind of critical of Chuck Douglas's point of view that Trump was, pawn, was Putin's pawn or some buddy or anything. Baloney. He had a lot of meetings to size this guy up and send a message.
Right.
And the last message that was sent was regarding Afghanistan. And that was sent to the Taliban. Now, I heard Trump speak at several private sessions. One was the Trump O'Reilly tour, where O'Reilly interviewed Donald Trump. It's not a political rally, just, what happened in your watch. Let's talk about some tough problems. And also at CPAC, where Trump was talking to the conservative crowd. So what came out of the discussions that were these private discussions with Trump was that regarding the Afghanistan situation, he wanted to get out of Afghanistan. He thought it was a bad deal. He wanted to get out, and he had planned to get out. And he didn't want any problems pulling out. So what was revealed in those interviews was that he had sent the Taliban leader in Afghanistan, a picture of the Afghanistan leader compound. Like, I believe this is where you live, sir. And then he had his conversation with the Taliban leader saying, look, we're going to pull out. I don't want you damaging any U.S. servicemen while we pull out, because we know where you live. And, oh, by the way, if you read the papers, you know what happened to Soleimani when he started screwing with our guys. So that was Trump's plan, was to pull out of the Afghanistan problem in a controlled way, leave the Bagram Air Force Base open for monitoring Russia and China, a key strategic position. And that was being rolled out right on schedule until Biden got elected. And then he decided, we're not going to deal with the facts on the ground, we're just going to pull out. So then Trump talked about General Milley. He said, I asked him for his advice on pulling out. And he said, we're just going to leave the equipment there and bomb it. Let's just destroy all the equipment so that the Taliban can't use it. And Trump was saying, well, that's pretty good equipment. It's like some $12 billion worth of stuff. No, I want everything out of Afghanistan, everything out. And then we'll, turn it over to the Taliban with the proviso that we're still going to have U.S. soldiers there, about 20,000, about 2,000 rather, and the Bagram base. Well, Biden comes in, he wants out. Milley changes his tune. No, we can just, leave it there. Okay, so he leaves it there. $12 billion worth of good U.S. military equipment. There's a Vietnam-like bailout with instead of helicopters coming off the roof in Saigon, you got people holding on to the transport
Yeah,
planes that are going
that
off the
was
runway.
terrible.
Same, it's horrible, but the same scene there. You're just you're chased away with your tail between your legs when you had a good plan to get out without the dilemma of the chaos that ensued. So there's quite a contrast between Chuck Douglas's approach of Trump's view of the world and his actions and my own approach. And the purpose of this editorial was to kind of clarify that basically we are living in a world with tough people. There's people who want to do us harm. And the quote that we both agree on is the Reagan quote of peace through strength. You got to show resolve. And when you do, you're going to make the bullies pause. And I hope we have a change.
Well, I don't know if we
leadership.
have a change. I think he's still doing the same thing. He's looking at probably the worst solution to whatever problems he's facing. And he doesn't know how to carry through on it, or he doesn't have the people, I guess, that know how to either.
Well, I'd say all you need is a pen, Carl.
That's right.
Because the first day in office, back when gas was, $2.25 a gallon,
Right.
as I drove in today, $4.29 a gallon,
Yeah.
$4.29. What happened? I mean, this is
Oh, that's the thing too. And what's the solution? We're going to take our reserves instead of turning on the people who have had all the ways of meeting the need
we had
with their
capacity
own
in
gas.
place. We had capacity in place.
Yeah.
And on day one, after Trump left, Biden signed these executive orders basically shutting down the fossil fuel industry. Regulations are going to be reimposed. Leases are going to be canceled. If you want to do fracking, good luck, pal, because we're going to be making it really hard for you to do that. So the oil and gas industry says, well, okay, it's going to be tough. We better hunker down here. So production goes down, prices go up. So I talked about what Biden could do with just a stroke of a pen, which is to reverse those executive orders that he signed on day one to let the oil and gas industry go back to what they had prior to Biden's coming on board. That's all he's got to do. Just go back to what we had on day one and let the harvesting of oil and gas begin.
Well, I guess he thinks he doesn't, that's not going to help the electric cars in the industry at all. But it's a phase in. You can't just chop it off, anything that you're doing, and hope that it's going to be a smooth change. You got to phase it in.
I mean, if you're on monkey bars as a kid, you kind of want to grab the next one before you let go of the first one. Otherwise, they come crashing down. If you're going to let go of your fossil fuel energy supply and not have a good grasp on it to replace it, you come crashing down with energy prices being high, and it's terrible. I mean, everything's gone up. The cost of transportation is killing everything because you got to truck this stuff. Food, groceries, everything's got to be trucked in. And diesel's doubled, so everybody's cost of living is going up. It went up 8.5% this year so far. 8.5% after being no inflation under Trump. Now it's 8.5%.
Well, did you hear what this new budget is too? That is something else. I don't know how many $1 trillion now he's willing to spend with no income. He's all going to get it from the less than 1% people who are making billions, But they're making billions because they know how to handle the money and they know how to plan on getting, increasing their income. But doing it in a way that isn't illegal. They're taking advantage of maybe some wrong laws. That always bothered me. You can change things by canceling stuff. But the best way is to go change your problem in the law, the legislation that's allowing things that you think are improper to be changed.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Carl. I mean, to quote Bernie Sanders, a billionaire will have $1 million lawyers looking out for his interests and making sure he takes every advantage of the tax law legally.
Right.
And I think one of the big pluses that was in prior campaigns was, the simplified tax structure, the one-page tax return. What do you make? what do you owe? You can't write it off. You just have a low, flat tax.
Right.
And yeah, you can have a threshold to kick in.
Yeah.
You don't want to, for somebody who's working as a waitress and has kids to support, you don't want to put a tax burden on them. But say you have a $40,000 limit. Anything below that is untaxed.
Right.
After that, you start getting your tax brackets with no write-offs.
Yeah.
I mean, all write-offs is government policy to give special favors out to favored industries. There should be no deductions. Just flat tax, simple return. It's easy to audit. What are your W-2s? What are your 1099s? Here's your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Chop $40,000 off. The rest of that's taxable. And you can debate the brackets to make sure it's appropriate for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But then you wouldn't have these shenanigans about legal loopholes in this very, very complicated tax code. So,
Well, there's one thing that would bother me a little bit. Some of these people do make big donations to build universities, medical, and all that sort of stuff. And there is an incentive for them to do that. And I think they make better decisions than we do with that money.
yeah, no doubt. If you've got an alma mater that you're grateful to for having you get started, that's fair and appropriate. But that brings up another controversial topic, Carl, which is the death tax.
Yes.
I mean, one of the problems I see with wealthy families and irresponsible offspring is this vast inherited wealth that is not gainfully used to improve the benefit of society. Now, you certainly have these wonderful foundations that do a lot of good. And then you got others that are, like the Ford Foundation, I'll give an example, which has got a agenda that's very left-wing, very woke, very counter to Henry Ford's wishes. So, I mean, I think it's reasonable to have a death tax and maybe a very high threshold like $10 million. If you got a family business, you got a family farm, yeah, and sure, you can incorporate that and pass that along. But if you got $1 billion and you're going to set up some foundation like the Clinton Foundation.
Well, that's a phony thing anyway.
Right.
But
give a paycheck to all your campaign operatives and your friends and family.
Well, there's a few people that have very left-wing type of things too. Their foundation giving all sorts of
You can have a foundation. We'll just give it. If you want to give it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, we'll give it to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and spread it out to 10 different deserving places, 10 million each, that's $100 million. But, don't necessarily give that to your spoiled kids because that's not going to be, I can't say not, but it's unlikely to be productively utilized for the benefit of society.
Sure. I mean, they have so much money now that they can give it out in strips. Maybe that's another way of doing it, though, is allowing people to make those kind of donations.
Yeah.
During their
lifetime. Sure.
Life. Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you rather? I mean, if you're going to give away money to an institution, and there's, whether it's Dartmouth Hitchcock or all these great universities we have, you build your campus. One of my fellow graduates gave them, I think, $100 million to MIT for the Schwarzman College of Computing to try to merge AI into the hard sciences to be able to do some really in-depth analysis of tough-to-read data that's very productive. And I'm thankful that I did it when he's alive. He worked hard. He was grateful to this kind of research, and he gets credit for it. So give it away while you're alive.
Right. I mean, it's a big benefit. What I'm hearing about it, how they're matching up artificial intelligence with the genetic processing for killing genetic diseases.
Yeah, there's a book out right now by Henry Kissinger and a couple of others about AI, and it talks about some of the promise of this deep learning that's going on. For example, there's a new antibacterial drug that was uncovered by a a thorough search of the literature that nobody was thinking about, but it had the right properties, and it turned out to be a very powerful new discovery,
Oh,
antibacterial drug. So this kind of research can
well, yeah,
comb through
because
the material.
if anybody is familiar with some of the way you look at different molecules and stuff, you can really believe that a machine can do faster than you
Right.
can.
When I was in high school chemistry, we had these little stick figure sets with balls and
Yeah.
and straws that would show the form of the molecule. And I always thought that the chemical compound was it, but that's not it. It's the shape of the molecule,
Yeah.
where it's got to fit into it's like a key in a socket that
Right.
fits into
That's right.
a cell in your body, and then unleashes something that the cell can be capable of doing. It's very three-dimensional, very computer intensive to figure out. So that's the good news, Carl. I hope we live long enough to live forever.
Well, yeah, I do too. I don't want to live forever, but I do want to enjoy the life that I have and do whatever I can do to improve it for everybody else, especially my children, but everybody, really. And we're getting into politics. Maybe that's, I think, most of us are trying to do for our state, because we like the state. We like basically the way it's being run, but it can always be better. And there are ways that it's heading sometimes that's getting worse. I mean, you talking about financing education and stuff. And I think you ought to tell the audience about the example that you gave me just a little while ago.
Yeah, there's in the news, there was a story about the Croydon School District and how everybody was shocked that they cut the education budget in half. So, oh no, we got some radicals taking over our town and blah, blah, blah. We got to do something. So I read the details of that, try to get the full story. And so these radicals who wanted to reform the school budget said, look, we send about half our kids outside of Croydon right now. And they go to parochial schools, they go to schools outside the district, go specialized schools, some are home educated. And the average cost of that is about $7,000. So why don't we give the parents $7,000 and say, school choice, here's what your fellow parents are doing. Would one of these work for your kid? And it would cover completely the cost that they're paying for these outside services. But then the teachers' unions go ballistic on this because their costs are more than twice as much. Oh, you mean if we, in the public school system in Croydon, got $7,000, we'd have to reform ourselves and be efficient and to be as productive as these outside alternatives? Oh, no, we can't have that. So there's now a big pushback to restore the budget. And so it'd be very interesting to see what happens, Carl. But I think the topic that we're converging on is school choice. I went to public schools 12 years, and I had great teachers, but that was in the last century. I think things have changed a little bit. And I think the unions are now kind of in control of the public schools. And as we see in today's union leader on school board problems, this is about the masks. Parents are fed up saying that, wow, we still have mask mandates in some schools. And I don't want this to happen again. We, the parents, want to have some control over this, and we don't want to give the school boards authority to mask up and send our kids at home where they're not getting a quality education unless their parents are prepared to homeschool them. So I think we are getting on and hitting some pretty good nerves here with the parents, having seen their kids.
Well, we need that transparency, that's for sure. I don't think they were questioned before, and they're so indignant if they are questioned that you're not a teacher, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, hell, I know what I'm talking about. I have to analyze many other things in my life, and I haven't been trained specifically in that. Some of it is just common sense.
Yeah, on morality and personal responsibility, the parents do a great job in training their kids. If you want to teach them chemistry and physics, you go to school for that.
Yeah.
Get a professional educator who can warm up the curriculum and get them a good education in the STEM topics.
But you
including
can find
civics.
out that the scientist or the mathematician is showing you how they teach, which doesn't get you involved in these social aspects of it, which shouldn't be put into all elements of the education. You can have it in some, health sciences or something like that, or even psychology, but they want to go outside the limits as in my mind. I think that if you have an opinion and personally want to do that, don't try to indoctrinate, which they are doing, the children who are innocent and still look at you as almost a god, when you're
Oh, yeah.
teaching them.
You worship your teachers.
Yeah.
We all did when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But now this curriculum is getting a little wacky, Carl.
It is. It is.
I think the focus, in a nutshell, should be to teach kids how to think,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
not what to think.
Right. How to analyze, how to question.
When I was at college, I got a technical degree, and we were trained to be skeptical. We would say, well, this is the experiment. We said, well, let me see that experiment for myself. I don't quite believe this. We were trained to be skeptical, and good science is always skeptical.
That's right.
You want to see it reproduced independently.
I have to laugh when I say it's decided, it's decided science. If you know science, everybody's always looking. They're still trying to prove Einstein's theory isn't right.
Yes. Yeah.
But, it's the fact that you're questioning everything. Well, I really enjoyed talking. We got to do this again soon. We got a whole, both of us have things that we like to talk about. And I hope you keep on listening to us. And I also hope that you get interested in the political type area around here. We have an upcoming election, and the Nashua Republican Committee is looking to have people who want to participate in the next election, either running for it or supporting some of the candidates. So come to our meetings. They're the second Wednesday of every month at the Marriott, and we'll see what we can do. We want to have everybody understand what's going on and having an opinion to maybe change it if it's necessary. Thank you for listening.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.